All right, I think we're live. Let's see if anyone actually joins this one. Normally I do these a little bit earlier in the day, but today everything is going absolutely nuts on the markets. So I thought, why don't we just jump on and see what is happening? Now, I am going to go through just a few things that have happened today in case anyone is not aware. I'm guessing most people probably are aware. But first, today we've had a huge sell-off. In case anyone's not aware, please do let me know if you guys can hear me and everything's good. Hello, everybody. I've got my chat window and things like that on this screen over here, in case you're wondering. So today, the overall market seems to be doing reasonably okay given the situation. So Vanguard S&P 500, for example, is only down 1.4%. Let me just show you this. Okay. Tesla is down 5.5%. Apple's down. Tesla is an interesting one where it's been crashing massively over the last few days, but we're seeing a big sell-off. I don't have much of a portfolio on eToro, but the sites where I do have a portfolio, they print all your public, all your private details. So I'm going to show you stuff on here. I actually went and bought Tesla earlier today, just in between filming a couple of my videos and doing some stuff with family. It was a sale day. There are not many days around when you can go and buy stuff without having and I think I mentioned in a few of my videos, when one of these days comes, I just take it as an opportunity to buy. And I don't just say that. So I went and collected whatever spare bits of cash I had, and I bought a ton of this stuff. I bought some Nvidia. That was on a really good sale today. I bought Tesla. I think I invested an extra 14 shares of Tesla. I didn't have that much cash lying around, but what I did have, I managed to go and put it in there. So not on this portfolio, on my trading 212 portfolio, which I think I can show. Yeah, okay. So so if I show you over here, I was just sitting here watching Tesla collapse, and I managed to buy it at 613. I think the last buy that I did. And we have 18 shares. So so this is going to be an interesting day. Anyway, let's jump back to the camera and just talk. I'm still learning this. This is like the first time I'm properly doing this. This should have happened yesterday when I was meant to be talking about the budget, but unfortunately that wasn't going to happen. Let me see who is here. Ooh, there's actual people here. Wow. Hello, everyone. Will Tesla go to 900 mark? So I'm going to be doing a video at the end of next week, I think it is, where I'm going to be talking through the way that I value companies with Tesla as the sort of main example of that valuation. And I think that one's going to be quite interesting. The problem I have is that, like, I try to straddle this line where I want to go deep enough that people find it interesting, but I don't want to go so shallow that it's sort of boring and really surface level. Because I made a video talking about why target prices are often like not well constructed by just using top-down models, which is what a lot of people do, because it does make a lot of sense. It's very quick. You know, it's industry standard. You just type in a few numbers and bang, you get the answer at the other end. But there are definitely a few issues. But because I think I went a bit deeper on the maths there, and the way that I was talking about it, I found that far fewer people watched that video than any of the other recent videos, because it was just probably going a little bit too deep. So I'm going to try to talk about how I value companies on a sort of, so a small anecdote. I was working at Capital One when the last crash happened, and all the bank stocks completely collapsed around about when the Lehman Brothers went down. And Capital One stock was down by something insane. It was like a factor of 10-ish or something. And I just saw, so I was very young back then. I had zero money as my first proper job. And I saw a bunch of people around me on sale day going and buying stuff. And it doesn't matter if you buy right at the bottom. It doesn't matter like if you time it. If you're buying stuff that is massively discounted what you think the actual genuine value of that thing is, then it's, in my opinion, a pretty decent investment. And so I am now that we're having another one of those opportunities, taking that to heart. I am not going maybe as far. I saw Meet Kevin is maxing all his credit cards out. I don't quite have the cash flow of Meet Kevin just yet. So we're just taking it nice and steady for now. What are my thoughts on Neo? I have a small amount of Neo. Neo is like an interesting one where they actually have cars. They're producing cars. Let me jump back on this screen. What are we? Middle screen. Okay. Neo is an interesting one. What's happening with Tesla? What's happening with Tesla just a few minutes before we close? We're in 621. Good. I bought it at 613. Neo's an interesting one. I think there's a future there, and they're definitely doing some really good stuff. They're growing massively. But I'm not 100% convinced that that business model they have as it stands, with the changes and batteries and all that kind of stuff, is necessarily the way it's going to end up. But unlike many other companies that are valued extremely highly, these guys are actually putting products out there. They work. They seem to be pretty good. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry, I can't read everyone. I'm trying to talk at the same time as reading. So can I please recommend some good books about getting finance? I can recommend a lot of books that you shouldn't read if you want to watch that video. I always say the best book to start on any kind of business or finance related thing is Who Moved My Cheese. So make sure you go and read that. Why is Tesla shares so high compared to other companies? Well, I think it's, so I talk, links to some of the other questions. I talk a lot about my investment strategy that like I try to follow. And one of a really big, one of a number of things that I'm really particularly focused on is how can I invest in companies where the company is growing massively and investing a huge amount. And with Tesla's case, this is a huge deal, but also the industry within which they are in is growing massively. And so the personal transportation industry, I think, is on the rise for two reasons. One is developing countries are developing, and this is becoming much more of a thing. But it's also, I think, the way people live, the way people work, and the distribution of people is changing. And the events of the last year and a half, it seems longer than it has been, are kind of forcing that change to happen more quickly than perhaps it would otherwise have. And people are probably not necessarily going to have to live in city centers in order to work for big companies. And that's certainly something that's going to be changing rapidly. But anyway, so the industry is growing. They're growing within the industry. I think the biggest thing with Tesla in terms of how they are valued by a lot of people in the market is this point that I made in the video that when I talked about how people maybe miss on the target prices. And that is, there isn't enough, I think, in my personal opinion, enough accounting for the reinvestment that is currently being made and what that's going to be doing to a lot of their underlying performance numbers, including things like margins on the cheaper cars, which is where I think the biggest driver of the drop in the margin in the last quarter has been. I think people are not recognizing the benefit that building those kind of gigafactories over in Shanghai and other places, and the new ones that are being built in Berlin, I don't think people are fully accounting for what it's going to do for those numbers. And that's just my personal opinion, but I'm going to talk in a lot more depth about that. What else have we got happening today over here? This is quite interesting. My portfolio is down massively. I'm on plus 2.7% on my portfolio. I did put a lot of money in today, whatever I could find, to buy some Tesla stock. So that probably diluted it a bit, but we are seeing red. It's going to be quite amusing. You know, I don't know if you guys watch these channels, but I watch some channels just because, like, I'm a YouTuber, I guess now. I can call myself a YouTuber. I have 11,000 subscribers or whatever. I watch some of these YouTube channels where people just do relentless portfolio updates. And they do a video like, here's my trading 2-on-2 portfolio, here's my free trade portfolio. After today, those videos are going to be fun. Are they still going to be doing them? Because I don't mind showing you this because, well, this is just how it is, and this is the truth. But what are we? Fiverr is down. It's all red. Anyway, let me see what people are saying and put my actual camera on. In the last 10 days, would be called a market crash. Well, this is a difficult one because different people define it different ways. Some people think that there's a very specific definition. Some people will say that, you know, like a correction is up to 10% and a crash is 20% on and whatever. Do I think AMD is undervalued? Yes. The last sort of month or two, I'm slightly less bullish on them. I think they're prioritizing a huge amount. Let me switch AMD on over here. So, have I got AMD on this portfolio? Yeah, I do have some AMD on this portfolio. So you can see here there's they've been sort of reasonably flat for quite some time. I think they're prioritizing a huge amount at the moment on working with third parties. They're doing a lot of work with Tesla reportedly, although maybe not, but they're doing a lot of work with building some system integrations things. The consumer side of the business, there's a lot of talk, like was it yesterday or the day before yesterday when they released another graphics card for the consumer side of the business, and literally none of the ones they've released in the last 3 or 4 months can be bought in shops. Nvidia's launches have been bad, but theirs are even worse. So I think a lot of people are probably not really kind of thinking of them as a good company because of that. But I think they have a huge amount of their business that is now going towards building tech for other tech firms and integrating more. And as I see it, in terms of computational, like in components, AMD is at the moment just kicking it. So they're about to release a bunch of server grade processors. So I was looking at this is not even research on the stock. It's just because I'm a tech geek. And that stuff is insane. I think they're going for 96 cores with 2 like threads per core. And that might be coming through in the next generation of consumer level hardware as well. These guys are so far ahead of Intel that it's not even funny on the processor side. And in terms of the graphics cards, like they're sort of close. And I think the strategy that the new CEO has employed, I think is going to drive a lot of dividends. So I think they're still undervalued. I haven't done a like proper full-on valuation. I've only done like back of the envelope kind of stuff on them. I still think they're undervalued. I put a bit more money in them today. Excuse me, I need some drink. Normally I do these between takes, but on a live video you don't really have that, right? Do I think this will bottom out as quick as in March? I have no idea. If I did, I would be very happy with myself. But I personally went and mustered the cash. So I didn't kind of do it here. I did it today, and I put a lot of it. How much did I? Where do you even see this stuff? About 14 earlier. So yeah, I put a bunch of it earlier today, and I bought a 613 on Tesla. So I don't know if this is the bottom, but I'm pretty happy with being in around this spot, because in my mind this is still so much cheaper than I could have bought the same stuff just a few days ago. And certainly like for the last, I mean, this is the cheapest it's been since what, December? When is that? December? Yeah, beginning of December. And I know there was a jump here, so we could maybe plateau down here, but it doesn't really matter to me, because it's like if you're buying something on a sale, you know, if something normally costs £10 and you go and buy it for £5, and then that same thing tomorrow can be had for £3, you could be disappointed, but you could be just happy that you bought it for half the price it normally is and that you think it should be, and that yesterday you bought the same thing for 10 and you were kind of happy with that anyway. So I'm not really, was my capital on at Old Street? No, it wasn't. My Capital One office was in Nottingham, but there was another Capital One office in Canary Wharf, and I sometimes worked out of that one. What have we got? Threw some money in AG and EasyJet, and the share price are up 40%. Nice. I'm not brave enough to go down the airline route just yet. I'm all out. Same for oil. I'm not in oil at all at the moment. But I wish I had a crystal ball told me how much longer this drop will last. Yeah, me too. But as I mentioned previously, mine is in repairs after I dropped it. So, what do I think about Salesforce? I'm not 100% sure, if I'm honest with you. Ooh. Am I lagging? Because now people are telling me that I'm lagging. Is this actually? Am I being hit again by the internet gods that don't like me? If I am, please tell me. And I apologize if that is the case. And if it is, then I'll probably have to just end it at some point. I would go for better. Okay, I'm not okay. Because YouTube was telling me that I'm lagging massively, but then also other people were telling me in after the comments, and 1 or 2 comments said so as well. All right, we're all good. I would install better. I was considering, I actually looked into installing better internet, because the problem is I'm on the fastest broadband BT that I can possibly be, but even that thing is really slow. It's like the 80 down and 15 up, but it never is really, because they can throttle you up at the junction where they just decide what you get. And obviously at lunchtime, which is when I was trying to do the last one, everyone else is watching Netflix or whatever, or YouTube. Right. So what else is happening in the markets? Now that they're shut, they're closed for 3 minutes. Shall we just have a look at what is happening with those markets? 1 second. We're going to just... we're just going to go and have a look at them. I've strategically placed my face over the bit where they put details. So what have we got? So where did we end up? Tesla, we're in 621. I'm happy. Bought below close. There was 602 I was looking at here, but I was on the phone. I was on the phone when it was down. 601.89. That dropped massively. So we started the day. This is a big drop. We went 10% down, right, in the day. We were 718, and where's the 850? Yeah, this has been a crazy couple of weeks or a week or so. So I don't know. I'm happy to be buying now because I was buying there. It's actually amusing. So my eToro portfolio, I got some comments on one of my videos. People saying, "What do you know? I looked at your portfolio. You suck." Because this is my portfolio with eToro. And I bought this and was making a video about like how I just setting up the account on eToro, and just as one of the example trades on there, I went and bought that. and I just left it in there, and it's now I think I bought it at the highest price you could possibly buy it at, but I was just literally doing it live while recording the video, so that wasn't the best investment I've ever made in my life. But I'm holding on to it because I still think that price is still lower than what my target is by quite some way. My Bitcoins are not doing too well either. So what else have we got happening? Let's see. AMD finished on 77. Wow. I bought into AMD, but I can't remember what I bought it at. What did we buy at? 79. Not so good. What do we got? Apple was down. I was really surprised by Apple being down because they've released so many really positive news recently on multiple different fronts. Their new chip is doing extremely well. The car stuff, I just don't really understand why. And this is the point that I always make. Like, whenever I see stuff and when I look at the news, when I try to dig up what's happening with the company, if there's no really good rationale, I just treat it as a sale. Okay, let me see if there's any questions on here. What do I think of Salesforce? Good earnings call, 20% revenue growth. Yeah, so Salesforce, sorry, I was on this question, but I skipped it. Salesforce, it's one of those where I think there's definitely a lot of potential, but they're kind of like, the problem with them versus some of their competition, in my personal opinion, is that they try to hit too enterprise grade level, and it really works for some enterprises. But because of that, I think they really miss the mass market opportunity. And I think that as the world is changing really rapidly in terms of smaller companies and individuals working and all of that kind of stuff happening, I think that might be their downside, because the software is just not really catching up, and some other guys are doing really good stuff in a very similar space. And it's stuff from the same, like if you work in project management, Jira is a really good example that I often use for this kind of stuff, where there's one software that tries to do everything. And because of that, it doesn't do like any particular use case that well or easily, because it's just like got too much stuff. And that's just me. Anyway. So what other questions have we got? Google. Good game. What happened with Google? Somebody said Google, and I'm like, what happened with Google today? Did I buy? I bought some Google today. Not much though. What did they end? They ended on 2035. They did okay. They hardly moved. Today. Do you think you're a little too diversified? Oh, I think I'm a little diversified. I have in a way, I have a lot of different companies, and but actually it's not too much stuff. I have 30 investments in this. One sec, let me just jump back onto this one. I have 30 different investments in this one, so it's not a huge amount, but you can see I'm slightly over invested in purple. you might wonder what purple is. It's Tesla, and it's mainly because I went and bought a load of Tesla while it was on sale today. What are my thoughts on using 10,000 for 5% down scheme and buying a house to rent out to tenants? I have not. I haven't actually looked too deep into the details. I'm presuming that that scheme is not for buy-to-let properties, but I don't know. And what you should do about that is up to you. But the government build strategy. I actually think that after these types of situations, after a massive economic downturn, after a situation where lots of people lose their jobs and stuff like that, I think building investment is probably good. I don't have a lot. I don't have any in this portfolio. Oh, I don't. It's on my free trade. In free trade, I have a lot of some of those recovery stocks. But yeah, I'm not too deep, mainly because I don't know enough about the industry yet. So when I don't know anything about the industry, I find it much harder to invest because I find it much harder to do the models to try to tell me what I think the target price for them should be. And so I don't do that well on them. So that's probably why I'm so overly invested in tech related fields and like online stuff. Just because like I get that industry well. I've worked in finance and some other similar fields, so I can kind of value those businesses a bit better, in my opinion. Just my opinion. I'm a random guy on the internet, but yeah. What else we got? How come I haven't got more in real estate? Looks like a really good thing to have with the current. Because in my opinion, I'm not particularly interested in REITs. So a lot of people, almost every finance YouTuber in the UK talks about REITs as though it's like the next best thing since sliced bread. And I just don't get it because the returns just don't really do it for me. The cost structures, the way they invest and the types of properties they invest doesn't really do it for me either. I really do want in the long term to be investing in property. At the moment, I only invest in property that like I own for myself. But I only want to do it when I actually have the money to invest in actual property, rented out, stuff like that. At the moment, I don't have that kind of cash lying around, but in the future, maybe. What's the best stock in the UK for recovery? Let me have a look. I'm gonna look unfortunately, I don't have the amazing tech to go and link my phone onto the screen just yet. But let me just have a look through my free trade portfolio on this. See, this is the big downside. I love desktop applications and I feel more people need to have them. I've moved my pensions over. 2 out of the 3 are over out of my solidify ones. Yeah, so I hold a decent amount of Ashtead. So Ashtead Group, ticker AHT. That's a British company in pounds. They actually operate a lot in North America as well. They're not a building company per se, but they supply a ton of stuff to the building industry, among others. And I think they have massively bright prospects. Again, they're just me. That's probably my favorite UK recovery stock right now, maybe. I personally like Rolls-Royce. What are your thoughts? I used to live in Nottingham for a long time. And actually, that's like literally just down the road. And I remember I played for a local rugby team, and we played. The Rolls-Royce had their own rugby team. What are my thoughts? I don't know, like some of the same issues as with the airline industry. There's, I think, a lot of uncertainty around which direction things are going to go, what the demand's going to be, how much they may pivot into other directions while this is happening. I just don't know enough about the stuff that's happening behind the scenes to make like a really good assessment, because I think there's some really big plays that they need to be doing in order to come out of it. What else we got? What are your thoughts on ARK? So on all ARK stocks, I think I mentioned this in the last live, but there wasn't that many people there. I do find them quite entertaining. So let me see. I think I've got ARK on here. I just bought it for fun. I put $50 into it. Let me open it up and let's see the chart. Does it have enough data on here so that I can show you what I mean? Oh, it doesn't. So unfortunately, the eToro chart. Let me just open up. I'll just switch it on once I found it. Yeah, so So this is the ARK Invest portfolio. That's their most common one, right? And everyone gets really excited because a lot of people were investing like around about here. So as the pandemic kind of started, they were very heavy on tech stocks. In fact, their portfolio is really, really similar to the portfolio that I am invested in, like just the same sort of companies. And they did really, really well through this period, which everyone else who's invested in similar stocks would also kind of have done the same well. But the problem I have is that everyone got really excited here, and there was a bit of a run here from like low 40s to like low 50s, mid 50s. And then it, the drop that everyone suffered, and everyone's like got really excited because basically it's a tech investment fund that did really well. And there aren't that many pure like diversified within the space of tech, but not in a representative way, in the sense that they're not just picking all the tech stocks, for example, from the S&P 500 or some other kind of thing like that, which some of the other funds do. And yeah, it's really exciting. But if I look at the performance kind of here, like the same exact portfolio was sluggish, and suddenly everyone's talking about it. Everyone's really excited. But the thing is, like that whole sentiment of past performance doesn't reflect what might be happening in the future really applies, in my opinion. And it's like, yeah, it's great. It's great. I'm not necessarily convinced. Like when I look at the distributions, I don't know what it is right now, but it was like 12% on Tesla. And I'm like, yeah, well, like everyone who is bullish on Tesla will have a large holding, and lots of people I know do as well. But that doesn't necessarily, I'm not seeing stuff in there going, oh, well, that's a really nice play. Like I had Palantir before those guys went in. And I am not any kind of smart investor at all. I'm just a regular guy. What I'm saying is I don't look at it and go, oh, wow, they made these plays where nobody would have kind of made those moves, and that's why they moved up. And so I have really mixed feelings. Like I have $50 in it over here. I have $50 just for fun in ARK. But yeah, they're not doing well just because of the Tesla and other stocks that they're holding. So yeah, what else we got? Do I own any BNGA shares? It's a good question. I don't anymore. So I bought in, I don't do short-term trading much, but that one was just too good, to pass on. I bought in, it wasn't a lot of money. It was a small amount of money at, I think it was like $4 to $5, and I sold at $11.50. Or something like that. I can't remember. But it wasn't a lot. Let's have a look at Sign Asset Management Holdings. They're interesting. I haven't looked at them. I will do off here because otherwise I'll get too into trying to understand them. Electric planes are a no-go for large planes. Hydrogen all the way. Do your research. I'm guessing this is not to me. I guess it's a bit. What mic am I using? It's a Rode NTG shotgun. So it's not one of the NTG with like something that comes up. It's just Rode NTG. It's quite neat, actually. It's quite good. I quite like it. Am I capping? Am I too loud? If anyone thinks it's like too loud or hitting, is it better if I just drop it a little bit? All right. Tell me if it's better, because I just realized that was probably going way too loud on that mic. Thanks for pointing out, whoever did that. Right. So, what else happened? I don't think much else happened. So we've had this big sell-off. What's going to be happening tomorrow? Tomorrow's the last day of the week before we break up for the weekend, and I have no idea. I suspect that things can't go way further south without it being an overall market crash. And we haven't really had, it was more like a tech sell-off, because if I look at the numbers, if I look at just the S&P 500 themselves, NASDAQ, those don't seem to be doing anything particularly, like, sure, they're down, but 1.3% on the S&P 500 for the day, that's not a lot. And even over the last week or so, it's not down. So it's hitting anyone like me who's over invested in tech, because some of the tech companies are being sold off a lot. But I'm not sure we are gonna, because typically when things really begin going crashing down, sure, some industries are going to be doing a lot more of it, but here we're not really seeing that broad coverage of this. So I think we might be okay. Maybe a short sort of few weeks bear market or something, but I don't know. Who's going shopping tomorrow? I don't know, Tom. I've already gone. I spent everything I had. I pulled out all the spare cash that was lying under my mattress. I don't have it anymore, so we shall have to find out. What do I think about possible further dip in the FTSE 100, arguably even lower than it was Friday, 26th Feb? I don't know. I'm so underexposed to the FTSE. Like, I have some UK stocks, but most of them are like stocks that I think individually are really worth it. I'm really not that heavy on FTSE whatsoever. I can probably like count. I probably have like less than 10 UK companies across the different places where I hold money. Maybe even like five or something. So I'm not particularly bothered. The UK bank stocks, which are so big in the FTSE, I just think they are like they've dropped. So if let's go and look at like Lloyd's share price. This is often a good one, right? Because I always get amazed whenever I watch people who talk about like they show their portfolios and like I'm all in on Lloyd's or on something, and I just look at this graph over here, and I'm like, all right, what is it that you're really excited by? Because it went from here to here. Because like these banks, they're innovating in nothing. Their retail business is being destroyed as it stands, completely destroyed by competition. Their commercial business is being destroyed by a bunch of other stuff, Brexit being one of them, but just generally like the problem with some of the really big UK banks, in my personal opinion, which is why I don't invest in them, is they're refusing to adjust to the times, they're refusing to change the way that they think, to change the kind of products that they offer, change the kind of way, like the way they deal with customers. And I think ultimately that's the reason why these guys, I don't see what it is that's going to happen in terms of their product lineup, whether that's on the investment side, even some of the investment arms of some of these banks. I just don't really see what it is that they're doing different that is suddenly going to push them ahead. So that's why I'm not. And they're such a big part of the FTSE. What are my thoughts on interactive brokers? Double-edged sword, I guess. I mean, I currently don't have an account because at the moment I only have the three sort of free accounts. They're all free-ish now. Now, after today's video, they're all free-ish. There's no such thing as free cheese in a mousetrap, somebody said earlier, which is funny because it's from one of my earlier videos. But in terms of paid platforms, there's a bunch of these sort of not crazy expensive, but somewhere in the middle platforms that I just need to go into depth on. Because the problem is, I've seen a lot of other people just go and do a review of like every platform out there. And there's two issues. One is these people get paid to do these reviews in many cases. So today, for example, just in the spirit of full disclosure, I got approached by Orca, who are a relatively new app, and they are willing to pay content producers like myself to do a review. They don't want to necessarily influence it. I didn't get that far. But the problem I had is a bunch of other UK YouTubers want to produce videos on almost exactly the same day, and I presume that they got paid for them, although I have no idea. I have no knowledge of whether that happened or not. And my problem is that they didn't disclose at all during the videos that they did, and some of them didn't do anything afterwards. Some of them corrected the video afterwards by like writing stuff or doing an overlay, but I don't really I'm going to review some of them properly, but if I'm going to review them, I don't want to just go and read what it says on the website, or just like point to the number at the bottom and say that they're FCA registered or something else like that. I want to do an actual review where I go and find some things that are, unique or different, or things that people haven't really thought of, even if I get paid. So for example, I did an introduction to eToro, which was actually a sponsored video. I made it very clear in that video. But I feel like there's a few things where eToro is really good, and after digging enough, like the fact that you can buy into things like ARK portfolios, the fact that they're probably the cheapest company out there for investing in UK stocks, for example, which most people don't realize. So it's a US dollar denominated platform, but it's probably the cheapest if you regularly invest in UK stocks, because you pay the 0.5% when you deposit money and then 0.5% on the way out. But once the money's in, you don't have to pay anything for the conversion. But not only that, you don't have to pay any stamp duty either. And this is a big one. So in the UK, if you're buying UK stocks, like the big ones that trade on LSE, you have to pay stamp duty every time you buy. And for me, that is a really big difference because, one time you buy it, it's 0.5%, but then if you sell and buy a different UK stock, that's another 0.5%. And eToro actually covered that fee for you. But when I review things, I want to find these little things that I think when you begin putting together, like, oh, hang on, this is one that I haven't heard other people mention. And so I want to do the reviews of these other ones, but it'll take me some time because I want to properly get into each one, put money in, do some trades, find some things out that annoy me, find some things that I really like, and we'll get there. Banks are very difficult to understand. Most people should not buy bank stocks. Yeah, I think I agree with that as well. I don't think the funny thing is, I don't think most people who work in banks understand their bank very well, understand what's driving the value, how the entire system works. I mean, I've worked in enough of them. I worked in Bank of America, the biggest bank in the world, and it's just like this. The thing is so big. Nobody, even in the senior positions in any part of it, really understands the overall picture that well. So if they don't, yeah, it's hard. What's with the giant map? Do you like traveling? I do like traveling. Road trips. There's a map on there. Road trips is my biggest passion and hobby, and I go on some really crazy ones from time to time. Although now that I have grown up a little bit and have a young kid, they're not quite as crazy. Like we've driven down to Sicily, which was quite nice, but not quite as crazy as some other stuff. What are my thoughts about trading 2 on 2 pies? I'm going to come to a few questions further up because I haven't seen them. I really like the idea of the pies. I made a whole video about what I basically said this, but it took me like 15 minutes to say it. I really like the concept, and it's really similar to what eToro do with the copy trader, but like in really infant stages, if you like. I just think that the execution at the moment makes them completely pointless. The way that they work, like you can go and copy someone's distribution, but you don't know when they actually updated it properly last, and if they then change their distribution in that pie, that doesn't translate to your pie that you just copied. So it's kind of like it doesn't really help. It's sort of like, here is a pre-built distribution at some point in the past that probably reflects in no way what that person would do with that pie in the future. But then there's big downsides, I think, with the copy trader feature where you're way over-reliant on some other person to be making essentially investing decisions on your behalf. And I'm kind of slightly unsure about how I feel about that being a very popular feature with lots of people as well. But I think the concept, if they spend a lot of time developing it, can be really cool. I just think right now, as it is, I wouldn't necessarily say it's anything interesting. Let's look at some other questions. What's my thoughts on Monster's CEO and what he said? Excuse me. I haven't actually read what he said. You're talking about T.S. Handel, I'm guessing, like rather than Tom, who's left. I actually knew Tom like a bit because we crossed paths in the past in our past working lives. But I haven't heard anything recently, so if somebody wants to tell me what it was that he said, I'll be interested to find out. I'll Google it after this video, this live is over. I was interested trying out Charles Schwab, but yeah, this is the problem with almost all the big ones. Some of them have minimum deposit amounts, which are like 5,000, but even when they don't, if you're going to go and start opening an account with one of them, when there's no fractional shares, there's massive fees of like £12 per trade and other management and platform fees, just to buy like a portfolio that's in any way diversified. You buy one Amazon stock that's 3,200. You buy a Tesla stock that's 850, well, 600, whatever it is. And before you know it, you spend 10,000 just by building a tiny little portfolio. So you can't really play on them. You can't really test them out properly. You can't go and if I want to go and do a few trades to see like what the spread is on buy-sell prices, how quickly they execute at different times of day, I'm going to be losing a ton of money. And that's what I normally do when I play around with these. So I'm not quite ready for that level of review. But stay tuned. If enough of you watch this video and the ads that come before it, maybe we'll get there. What made you ultimately leave the banking sector, Sasha? This is a really interesting question. So I worked in a lot of banks and services companies, lots of consumer finance products, a lot of credit cards and stuff. And then I was in and out of that, but largely still with it until, this is a very long story, but I met some guys in a random situation in London. Anyway, I ended up joining a company called Phones for You as a director. So they're sort of a retail company that used to sell phones, in case anyone can't remember. And then when that collapsed 3 months after I joined, honest, it wasn't me. Then I decided to go and start my own business, which is a strategy consultancy to work with banks. So I kind of left, but I didn't really leave because I ended up still I actually worked with far more banks, financial services companies after that period, because my company worked with almost all of the big names out there, on and off, like over several years. So I probably worked with a lot more banks after I stopped being in banking, if that makes any sense. Is it the end of the world? It isn't. Explain why the market is down lately. Oh, I'm sure lots of people will give lots of explanations, Sebastian. But I gave one. The truth is, there isn't a good logical explanation, because if there was, then people would know in advance that it was happening. And unfortunately, that is not what happens, and that is not how it is. I remember friends for you. Thanks for the answers. Have a good night. Good night, Tommy. What's capital gains on a normal trading account? Is there a threshold? Um, in terms of tax, yeah, there is a threshold. It's £12,300 per financial year, so up to the 5th of April. And capital gains um, depends on your level of income, but it's generally not a lot. You're paying 10-20%, depending on how much you earn. Can you trade in an ISA account? Yes. So I have an ISA. For example, with most of them, so with free trade, with trading 212, an ISA account works in almost exactly the same way as a regular invest account. So you can trade if you like, but it's probably not like you can invest more actively if you like. It's probably none of these apps are really designed for trading, and there's a lot of people who think that they're traders because they can go and buy and sell stocks frequently, but like they really aren't designed in terms of the execution, in terms of the timing, in terms of the natural spread, because of their access to different types of market makers and different places, different exchanges. Like these things, like if you want to become an actual trader, you really need to be using something else. But you can go and buy stocks. There are restrictions. You can't buy as many things because there's government restrictions, and there's other restrictions. Like, for example, on other platforms, when you can have invest accounts in other currencies or have multi-currency accounts, you can't do that with ISAs. But anyway, I'm talking about some random stuff now. Is the stock ISA junior to be asking? Is the stock ISA worth it? The type like an ETF, you just put money in with that. So I'd say yes and no. So I have a stocks and shares ISA, obviously, so on Trading 212, that's what I use. But my view on some of these platforms, which call themselves stocks and shares ISA, but in the end, they just give you like 5 portfolio options, with the lowest risk paying 2.5% per year, and the highest risk, the most amazing portfolio that delivers the best possible results, paying like 5.5% or 6%. I just don't get them, because like they aren't really doing what they say they're doing, in my opinion, and charging fees for the privilege. Like with almost, so you can go and read studies by Standard and Poor's, by any reputable like university professor, whatever. All of these are basically actively managed funds. So these are people who actively buy and sell out of stocks in order to try to beat the market, but they have a lot of restrictions. They have a lot of restrictions that a typical retail investor does not have, and you. For the same reason, I'd say don't follow retail investors either when they have a portfolio, because the vast majority of people who actively manage their funds will lose to the basic index they're trying to beat. So, for example, in my case, I invest in a lot of S&P 500 companies. 95% of people like me, and me included probably in that, will lose versus the S&P 500 in the long term. And so if you are trying to go and beat the market, the worst thing you can do is try to go invest in one of these funds, because they repeatedly, over many, many years, lose. And even in the data on their websites, if you go and look at them, they'll show you performance results. And some of them have the option to click a button that enables the S&P 500 curve. And it's just like, it's worse every time. So anyway, Sebastian is very interested in everything to do with crashes. When is the next frenzy high in the market forecast? Set your timer. It will be on the 2nd of April, 2025. Enjoy your rest before then. That's when it's happening. Maybe. Allegedly. Do your own homework. All right. With Trading 212 messing around at the moment, where would you recommend to start off? I'm not too fond of phone-only platforms like Free Trades. I want to have a platform. So if you don't want phone-only and you want like cheap pricing, the other one I use is eToro. You can go and use one of my links in one of my videos. They have a downside, which they don't have a lot of the things that are available in UK or Europe or UK specific, because they're a global platform. So for example, you can't buy VUSA, the big like S&P 500 Vanguard ETF, for example. You can't buy some UK stocks because of it. But it does mean you can buy some things that you can't buy on the other platforms. Like you can buy VU instead, which is the US version of the same Vanguard index. But you can't buy it directly, so you don't own the underlying asset, but you can buy it through a CFD with no leverage, which sounds really bizarre. But basically, it just means it's like a workaround. You don't pay any fees. There's no overnight holding fees. There's nothing else. You don't own the underlying asset, but your investment will perform exactly like the thing. So that's how. So I have. One sec. Let me. Where's? I need to get better at this. So I have, for example, ARK Invest in my eToro portfolio over here. You can't buy this in the UK, but I have it because I own it as a CFD. And this is a CFD which has, so I have zero leverage, zero costs. Is basically a sort of way of buying into companies that, or sorry, into ETFs that you can't otherwise buy into. I don't know, just want, if you use one of my affiliate links, they're really great. You get absolutely nothing, like literally no free shares, no benefit to you whatsoever. I get paid, but you don't have to actually, you know, it doesn't cost you anything. So if you choose to do that, I'd be very grateful. Thank you. They've actually dropped, so they had a minimum deposit up to $1,000 over the last few days. They've just dropped it to 500, and I think it's going to be dropping to 200 in the next few days as well. Ooh, wow. This is the first on my channel. Somebody gave me a tip, $5. The first one. I'm very excited. Blue Whale Fund is the best fund. I'm very happy. I can completely concur. Thank you so much for that. I'm so excited. I've never had one of these. All right. What's your biggest advice to give a beginner trader, and what's your biggest regrets and mistakes? Beginner trader. If you're genuinely being a beginner trader, I am not a trader. I'm an investor, and I'm not even an investor. To me, and I've said this a lot of times, investing is a way of growing your money. I don't think somebody can really be a professional investor unless you work in an investing firm and you're investing other people's money and charging them a fee for the privilege, and that's how you actually make money. And this is a thing that I often get really annoyed by so many other people, especially on YouTube, talking about saying you can become rich through investing. And to me, like, no. So if you're an actual trader, I don't have many tips or advice. If you're into investing, I'd say slow and steady, put money in, don't try to time it. All of these are just my personal opinion. I'm not a financial advisor, and if you do need financial advice, go and find somebody who actually knows what they're talking about. But I personally kind of have this philosophy that I don't try to time it. I don't try to game it. I don't try to do any of those. When there's a big sell-off of things, I buy them. When I see a stock where the value that I think that stock should have is much higher than what the value is, I'm interested in buying. Go and watch a video. I made a video a few weeks back now, maybe beginning of January even, which was on my investing strategy. And I think I link it at the end of most of my videos where I have that screen with the 4 videos or whatever. The reason not many people have watched it despite me doing that, but I think it's actually really interesting because I often get these kind of questions. Just go and watch that. That probably will answer quite a few of the things. Your opinion on holding commodities like gold, silver? Yeah, again, I don't play them. I don't play currency pairs, mainly because I don't see them. I see them as really useful trading mechanisms, but I don't see them as necessarily investing. What is happening? I don't see, another bit of money came in. I'm so happy now. This is gonna buy me so many beers. I don't see them as investments necessarily. I see them as a way of exchanging value or holding value while things are crashing. Potentially, if there's a long-term bear market, then I might be interested, but not necessarily. Actually, your accent sounds South African. What is your background? I get this a fair amount actually. So I have been in South Africa. I actually had a long-term partnership with a company based in South Africa, in Durban, but I didn't go there I went there like 3 times, maybe 4. I'm Russian. That's right. So I was born and grew up in Moscow. I made a video recently. I titled it like Sasha, Yanshin Exposed. I go through my whole background in that video. But I was born and grew up in Moscow, first in the Soviet Union, then in Russia. Came to the UK in 1999. So I've been here a long time. But I guess maybe to some people I probably also sound funny because I didn't grow up in a space where I built up an initial accent. And because I then came when I was older, I then, I guess, mixed a bunch of different accents from different places. And I lived in all different parts of the UK. I lived like near Birmingham, Nottingham. I studied in Oxford. I like lived in the different parts of Midlands, West Midlands near Coventry, down in Kent at the moment is where I live. I've kind of been all over the place. I've worked in even broader number of places, like everywhere. And so maybe I just have a big mix of all those different things. That's why it sounds so funny. Right. Sorry. So back to my learned so much from you the past week. Binge watch. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the 4.99. I really appreciate it. Sasha, how do you weigh portfolio between sectors? Again, go and watch my video on my portfolio, Tom. In terms of between different sectors rather than between types of companies, I don't do a huge amount of weighting there. I try to weigh it towards the industries where the industry itself is exploding, and I can see it's continuing to explode for the next 5 to 10 years, and there's really robust data and reasons why that's going to be happening, and an industry which I know and understand enough for me to be able to make actual genuine valuations of the companies that I'm happy with. That combination, I guess, is how I do it. Do I speak Russian? Yes, I do, and I can read "Hello, comrade" just below that as proof. There we go. Is it better to invest in the small ones, the big ones? Bunch of sense. Are you a spy? Yes. It's a quadruple bluff. So if I just did a double bluff and I said yes, then obviously you wouldn't think that I was saying the truth, because that would be a really weird thing to say. But then you think that I'm not a spy, so the double bluff is that I actually am. But that would be too obvious. So what I do is I do a quadruple bluff where basically I cycle through that twice, because nobody would think that I'm doing a double bluff, because that would be too obvious. But a quadruple bluff generally works, so yes. Bobo paid £5 for Sebastian to sit in the corner. Okay. That's amusing. Hi, Adrian. So many Russian-speaking people around. Right, small caps or emerging markets. I'm more on mid caps, and I don't really play too much in emerging markets. I used to, but I'm not so much right now. Guys, I'm gonna have to close out in 5 minutes because I've got somewhere else I need to be. There's something else to do. Thank you so much to the 3 people who have, for whatever reason, sent me a little tip. I really appreciate it. I've never had that before, and it's amazing. Thank you so much. Would I invest in 5G now for the long term? It depends what you mean by invest in 5G. Like companies in the telecoms industry, companies like I'm not very bullish on some of the stocks in telco and mobile, just because I see the world is changing very rapidly away from that. Some potentially on the infrastructure side, but the problem is in the UK, the infrastructure side is not really very investable, because it is sort of government or part of government owned or complicated. So what else? Are you investing in retail and travel stock now? I have zero idea. So I would love to get in, there's some really interesting travel stocks that I am interested, that I would like to, but I just don't know how they're going to fare. I don't know, like, in August last year, things looked like they were going like massively on the up and improving, and yet here we are in March this year. So I just don't know. I'm going to just take a couple more. Sasha, what's your thoughts on crypto? You hear about the NDF hype. Crypto, I have a small amount of Bitcoin. You probably saw somewhere in one of my portfolios. I used to have a lot more. So I have some really funny stories. I sold 10.5 Bitcoins a long time ago. I think they were 750 or so each, many, many years ago, to rescue my business at the time, because I needed cash and I had no cash, but I did have some of them. But I haven't really played in it much since. I actually mined Bitcoin. Oh, what was the year? Like 2012, maybe 2011. I can't really remember. So I had a whole setup where I built an aluminium lattice. I need to find the photos. Built an aluminium lattice where I put like the cheapest motherboards that would take 8 PCIe inputs, the cheapest processor like possible that fits into the slots on those motherboards, and then graphics cards just hanging. That thing heated my house for an entire winter. It was pretty amusing. So it was like a lattice where 8 GPUs per thing, and I had a lattice which was 3 by 2. Anyway, that was quite fun. But lately, my problem with Bitcoin is that there is a lacking underlying kind of utility at the moment. It doesn't really work very effectively as an exchange of value, which it really needs to become, because it's sort of part currency, part asset. It's like this unique class that is sort of a new class of its own, but I think it needs to really increase the utility in terms of people accepting it, people actually storing value in it. So, you go and sell something for Bitcoin, then take it somewhere else and buy something. And I know there's enthusiasts to do this, but even people who are very tech savvy, people who are really into Bitcoin themselves, would probably not normally do that. Probably wouldn't go out your way to like sell your car for Bitcoin and then buy your next car with Bitcoin. So until that becomes more of a thing, I think the volatility is still going to be there, and I think we're still several years away from that. So that's probably why I'm not on that. Send a tip and it's charged me, but not showing up. So if it randomly shows up in a few hours, oh, thank you, Sean. I haven't seen it, but I really appreciate it. Thank you so much if you have. Is Cinema dead if you're streaming? I don't know. Michelle says you bought a couple of pizzas for 10 Bitcoin. I heard those stories. I don't have those kind of stories, if I'm honest. I always try to sell when one of those little peaks, which are now tiny micro peaks, were happening. But last question. I'm going to do one last. Michelle, thank you so much. That was very, very generous. What's your top 3 to invest long term? If your opinion, I don't know. Like I have a few videos where I talk about some of the companies that I invest in, and make sure you go back and watch them. Tesla is definitely at the forefront of my investing portfolio by far at the moment. The video about boring stocks, watch that one, because that is a huge backbone of things that I invest in. But also, like, I'm really bullish on what Apple has, because when Apple go through a period of not really innovating properly for a few years, over the last couple of decades, even maybe 3 or 4 decades, quite often what happens at the end of that period is they go and bring out something really game changing. And if you take a big step back, for the last like few years, like the new chip, the M1, is groundbreaking, but that's just one thing. But you look at the major consumer tech they've been releasing, it hasn't really been moving mountains. Like, sure, there's a nice faster camera or whatever. So I'm quite bullish about their car prospects, about what they're doing on that front, about their consumer laptops and all of that, but also some of the enterprise grade stuff I think is potentially gonna have a big step change soon as well. So I'm pretty bullish on that. Anyway, that's all I've got time for, guys. I thank you so much for joining. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who donated some tips. I'm gonna make sure that I buy a load of beers with them. Thank you so much, and I will be releasing a few videos tomorrow. We'll see how many we can fit in. Maybe 2 or 3, because I want to make one on the second channel as well. But thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys later as always.